Okay, folks. Bad news, this condition we're all in globally, isn't it? Anyway, what I thought I'd do is try and do a regular series of shortish videos just on one particular thing. And fundamentally, I suppose the majority of them are going to be about little tips inside of Photoshop. And one thing I get asked about all the time is brushes and how best to control your brush in terms of size and hardness and opacity and flow. I'm a bit of an old fart. I grew up in a time when we didn't have a lot of shortcuts inside of Photoshop, so I tend not to use them, but some of the things I'm going to show you today I'm sure you're going to find immensely useful in your Photoshop workflow. And so we're going to be talking about brushes, but I'm going to keep this short and do it on a sort of no frills mills basis. That's why I'm not running a camera out at the side of me so you can see my ugly mug. Some of you might find it slightly disconcerting that you can't see me, but I know what I look like, and so I know I'm doing you all a big favour by not having to look at my ugly mush somewhere down in the corner, bottom corner of the screen. So I've got a new white document open, but of course this applies to any brush inside of Photoshop on any image. I'm just going to use a black brush on a white ground so you can see relatively easily. So if I just set my opacities all the way up to 100, I've got a flow of 100. And of course everybody knows, or I should hope everybody knows, that we can control the brush size with the left and right square bracket keys. We use the left square bracket key to make it go smaller and the right square bracket key to make it go larger. And usually that's the be all and end all of brush keyboard shortcuts that I see people use. Now then, here we go. Let us just hold down Control and Alt or Option, and if we're on a mouse we can click and hold the left mouse button. Now you can see I've got a very sort of wishy-washy green colour inside that brush, and you can also see we've got a diameter of 1100 pixels, a hardness of 100% and an opacity of 100%. This green is our brush preview, and I'll show you how to change the colour of the brush preview in a moment. Now then, if we keep those two keyboard buttons, Control, Alt or Option, and the left mouse button held down, or if you're on a pen tablet setup, you can just keep the pen in contact with the tablet. If we push up, you can see we make the brush go softer. If we pull down, we make it go harder. Push up, make it go softer. Move to the left, we make the brush go smaller. Move to the right, we make the brush go bigger. So there's one set of controls based on your brush preview and holding down the Alt and Option and Control keys and the left mouse button. And if we let go temporarily and we come to Photoshop and we come to Preferences and we go to Cursors, these are the cursors that are usually set by default in Photoshop when you install it, normal brush tip. I don't bother changing that. If you've got this show brush leash while smoothing activated, my advice is turn it off because it's a pain in the backside. But you'll see you've got brush preview here, and you can see I've got this colour of sort of a wishy-washy green. But if we click it, we can set that back to its default, which is usually red. And just click OK. And just click OK again. And now if I hold down Control, Alt or Option, and then hold down the left mouse button, now you can see my brush preview is red. So what we'll do is we'll make a relatively soft brush, and painting with black, you can see I can paint with a soft brush. Hold down Control, Alt or Option, left mouse click, drag down to make it go harder, drag left to make it go a little bit smaller, and now you can see we're painting with a much harder brush. Now then, What about controlling opacity and flow? If I use one of the number keys on the keyboard, that's either along the top of the keyboard, or if you've got a separate numpad, you can use those as well. If I type 5, you'll notice that the opacity is now dropped from 100% to 50%. If I hold down the Shift key and tap 5, now you'll notice that the flow has changed from 100% to 50%. If I just tap number keypad 1, now you can see the opacity has changed to 10%. However, if I tap 01 very quickly, now you'll notice that the opacity has changed to 1%. And if I hold down the Shift key and tap 02 very quickly, now the flow has changed to 2%. So that brush will be virtually non-existent. However, those sort of adjustments can come in quite handy when you're zoomed in at 300, 400, 500% and you're doing some very delicate dodging and burning. I'm just going to tap 0 on my number pad on my keyboard, and that will put my opacity back to 100. And if I hold down the Shift key and tap 0, that will take the flow back up to 100. And so now you can see I've got my full brush opacity back and my flow back. Now then, if I just come back to go through my history and go back to new, I'm just going to show you a neat little trick which comes in very handy when you're dodging and burning. When you're trying to dodge a highlight down the side of a tree trunk in a woodland scene or something like that, if I click and then I move down to the bottom of this image and I hold the Shift key down and click again, now I've just drawn a straight line with a brush, yeah? And all these controls apply to all different sorts of brushes inside of Photoshop. The opacity and the flow controls and shortcuts for their control don't apply to certain brushes, such as the spot healing tool, but they do apply, strangely enough, to the clone stamp tool, because we've got opacity and flow on the clone stamp tool as well. So there you go. I hope that's given you a bit of food for thought and shown you some of the controls that I know a lot of people don't know on how to control their brushes inside of Photoshop. So that's it for this video. I'm trying to keep it as short as possible. Hope you've got some useful information out of that, guys. And so until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you very soon. Tooroo.